Good morning, everyone. Good morning, sirs and ma. Good morning. Good morning. First of all, I want to apologize for starting this late. Normally, we're meant to start really early, but because we have to wait for everyone to come together and gather, that's why we have to start this late. So once again, I want to welcome you all to CPLAT's Realtors Academy. Also, for those watching us online, I want to welcome you all once again to CPLAT's Realtors Academy. And as you know, we are your investment house, and over here, what we do is to empower our consultants so that every one of us can take charge of our business endeavors. Also, I want to wish you all, on behalf of CPLAT Profile Limited, a happy new month. And we wish that this month is going to be another round of fruitfulness and breakthroughs on all sides. Amen. Now, without wasting much of our time, let's get into this session with an opening prayer. Let's bow our heads for prayer. In Jesus' name. Amen. Heavenly Father, we thank you once again for gathering us here like this. Father, we know that it is by your mercy that we have the privilege of being alive. Lord, we ask that you let your Holy Ghost teach us today, O Lord. And we ask, O God, that you open our hearts of understanding that may bear fruit in our hearts. Thank you, blessed Father. For in Jesus' mighty name we have prayed. Amen. Hallelujah. Now, we're going to be going into this session, and then the topic for today is barriers to successful marketing strategies. Barriers to successful marketing strategies. As much as we know that we all here are not newbies, we have been in this business for a very long time. But we must establish and know this, that we learn every day. I remember some weeks ago we spoke about levels of competence. Yes, sir? No, it's not. Yes, I'm watching it online. What's the error, sir? Okay, this. Okay, June. So it's meant to be July. Okay, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you for that, sir. Thank you for that. All right, so as you know, like I said, we are not newbies in this business. We have been in this business for a very long time. And we know that every day we're going to keep learning. And what are we learning? What we are learning is how to make our business more productive, how to be more fruitful. That is what we are here to learn. And if you have been following up with our seminars, some weeks ago we spoke about the levels of competence. And we said now that to become very competent in whatever it is you are doing, you must accept that you as a person can continually learn. You can keep on learning and relearning. And what does that entail? That entails that you are going to have to identify certain barriers, certain mistakes that you are making as a person. And that is what this class is all about, because most times we must know this, that without knowing the problem, and then we're going to go by defining what is market planning. What is market planning? Then we go on by stating why is market planning necessary? Why is it necessary? Before we now move on to barriers to the development of market plan. Then we go on to briefly explain each of those barriers and how to approach them before we conclude and then have questions and answers. Now, why are we studying this topic? Why do we need to know the barriers that are going to be hindering our marketing strategies? Why are we looking at this? Now, it says here that the purpose of this lecture is to expose a few myths. This myth here now is stating some of the misconceptions we have had about marketing strategies. That's what that myth there states. Now, it says to expose a few myths about marketing planning and in the process to suggest ways of doing it better in order to create a substantial competitive advantage. Now, if you remember, some classes ago we spoke about competitive advantage. And this is a class that is going to now help us to review our own advantage as a salesperson and how we can build on it. Now, it goes on further to say, for surely, if market planning doesn't lead to this, which is a competitive advantage, it can't be worth bothering with in the first place. So that is the purpose of this topic, to identify some misconceptions we have about marketing strategies, identify some of the barriers that can come in between we and our marketing strategies. Now, let's move on. First of all, what is market planning? What is market planning? Like I said, I always have to make this known because I know that we all here are not newbies. We've been in this business for a very long time. And that is why everything we are seeing here today, you might know them, but we're going to be shedding further light on whatever it is. Now, what's market planning? It says market planning is simply a logical sequence and series of activities leading to the setting of marketing objectives and the formulation of plans for achieving them. This is market planning. Simply logical sequence and series of activities leading to the setting of marketing objectives. Now, if you remember some classes, some previous weeks ago, we spoke about sales funnel. I think this was even last year. I think it was last year. We spoke about sales funnel, the sales funnel, and the different levels of the sales funnel and how you take the client from the beginning of the sales funnel to the end. The beginning, which is initiating the contact with the client, and the end, which is closing the deal. This also relates with that sales funnel we are talking about. But this will now shed further light. Now, it goes on to say now that companies generally go through some kind of management process in developing plans. See yourself as a company here, not just CPLAT. CPLAT can have our own, but you as a person, you're also is usually informal. Informal, that is, there is no actual laid down principle for it, but it's informal in a sense that they can just come together and then say it by word of mouth, say it and then just make plans. But now, they said in larger, more diversified organizations, the process is often systemized. It's often systemized. Now, what does this mean? It doesn't mean that the informal way will not work. It doesn't mean that. But a more systemized approach to your marketing plan would guarantee you more percentage of success. A more systemized approach to your marketing plan. Now, what does this entail? This entails you ensuring that you have a template where you have written down procedures. The procedures of every single step you want to take. Like at the beginning, if you remember, they said it's a logical sequence. So you as a person, you have to have a template where you have properly stated the logical sequence you want to follow on your marketing plan and how you want to execute it. That is the systemized approach we're talking about here. We're going to now move further on that. Now, why is market planning necessary? This is a very, very important question. Why is market planning necessary? Now, generally, as a matter of life, planning is something that is very, very essential. Generally, anybody who wants to aim at success knows that planning is generally essential. But we also need to now know that how are we making the plans? What are the things that we are considering? All these are questions we need to ask ourselves when making plans. Do you as a person consider all factors involved? Do you as a person go extra mile to consider every single thing involved in your market plan, or you just make a summarized, brief explanation of what it is you want to do? That's what it's talking about. Why is market planning necessary? Now, it says, apart from the need to cope with increasing turbulence, environmental complexity, more intense competitive pressures, and the sheer speed of technological change, a marketing plan is useful for these few things. 1, to help identify sources of competitive advantage. That's the first necessary key thing of marketing planning, to help you identify sources of competitive advantage. The second one says to force an organized approach. To force an organized approach. That is why market planning is necessary. That's the second one. To develop specificity. Specificity. What is that? You as a person now, you can have a plan that is not specific enough. But you have a plan accurate enough, it helps you to be more specific on the people you want to meet, the approach you want to engage, the different styles that you want to know, you want to involve in the plan. Specificity. Now, the last one says to ensure consistent relationships. This is what makes market planning necessary. Now, if you look at it, we as business people, we need to look at what is your own competitive advantage. Apart from the fact that the company you represent also needs to have a competitive advantage, even you as a person, what is your own competitive advantage over the next business person who is in your industry? You need to ask yourself this question. And that is why very soon we're going to look at the SWOT analysis. Most classes, you always have to look at this because it feels like people do not engage in SWOT analysis effectively enough. But what does that help you do? It helps you to look at your strengths, look at your weaknesses, look at your opportunities, and look at the threats. Why? Because you want to spot your own competitive advantage over the next person and where you can brush things up on for yourself. Organized approach. This cannot be overemphasized enough. As a salesperson, you just have to be organized, and I'm sure we know this. But how much do we engage it in our daily lives? How much do we engage it in our businesses? Do we pay enough attention to every single factor that is necessary? All these are things that we need to ask ourselves. Because like we said, competence is a continuous process. You never stop learning. You can never say, I am fully competent. I am completely competent. I don't need to learn anymore. You have to completely brush up on rough edges and keep on re-strategizing. So all of this now is why market planning is necessary. Now let's move on. I hope I am communicating. All right. Now, barriers to the development of market plan. Barriers. Now, before we go into this, right, I want us all to just sit back and reflect on some deals that we know we didn't close. Some deals that we know it was just this little, something very little that came in between we and closing that deal. Reflect on it and start asking yourself, what actually cost you not to close it? Before we go into this, because it's very necessary for us to actually reflect. It's very necessary. Why am I saying this? Because most times, people, they have certain solutions to certain things, but they do not know the approach. And that is what is development of a market plan. The development is building it from start to finish. That is the development. But we should now know that most times why we don't close these deals is because in between the whole development, there is something you did not consider. And a person will be made to learn the hard way by not closing the deal. That is learning the hard way that you did not consider this particular thing. You have to now go back. So that's why I'm saying that we have to reflect now and ask ourselves, what is the mistake we made that we didn't close a particular deal? Now, as you give yourselves that answer, as you reflect on it and give yourself that answer, let's now move on. Now, the first thing that says here is confusion between tactics and strategy. We're still going to explain all this, but let's just list it first. Take this in. Confusion between tactics and strategy. That's the first one. The second one is lack of in-depth analysis. Lack of in-depth analysis. The third is ignoring what competitors are doing. That's the third one. Ignoring what competitors are doing. The fourth one says confusion between process and outputs. You see, confusion. They are putting confusion because most times we are at crossroads and we do not know what to do. This is very, very true. You don't know what to do and you do not know how to seek. So this is very, very true. Now, the fifth one says lack of knowledge and skills. Lack of knowledge and skills. Then the sixth one says lack of systematic approach to market planning. Now, let me say this, that every businessman knows how important it is to plan. Every businessman knows that. But what men do not know is that a more systematic approach, like I said, will guarantee you more percentage of success than the informal one. We must know this. This is too key. Now, the last one says failure to prioritize objectives. Failure to prioritize objectives. Now, let's move on to the part where it explains all of this. First of all, confusion between tactics and strategy. Now, let us ask ourselves, what is tactics? What is strategy? What is the difference? We're going to look at the difference still, but ask yourself, are there times when you deploy certain tactics? Are there certain times when it's not clear enough or when it's not precise enough? Now, what does it say here? It says, a tactical short-term approach to marketing planning seems to work perfectly well. But it is also important to grasp the nettle of strategic orientation in plans that identify and develop their distinctive competence. You see that? That as much as we need tactical short-term approach, we also need to know the nettles of strategic orientation in plans. Strategic. It is too key. It's because as salespeople, sometimes we end up doing trial and error. Most times we try this, and most times that's how we learn. But when you open your heart to certain information and materials, you know that you can easily learn from that than doing trial and error. Now, what is the difference between tactic and strategy? What's the difference? Strategy dictates the marketing activity needed to achieve your business goals and vision. Strategy. Whereas tactics is the detail of the strategy. The detail of the strategy that answers how exactly that will happen. You see that? Because most times we get carried away with the strategy that we now fail to now pay attention to the tactics. If you look at businessmen that have journals, check their journals. What you're just seeing is strategies, tactics. They are using shapes, using diagrams, using organograms to create strategies and tactics. Why are they doing that? Because they know that if you make it informal and you make it all about you just sitting down and thinking, say, okay, I'll do this, you can skip some little details that you need to consider. But when you pen it down and make it more systematic, you create a page where you can put all these things down. What does it do? It enables you to now focus on some certain things that you need to consider. But when you make it informal, when you say, okay, I'll do this, without actually making a systematic approach to it, you will make a lot of mistakes. And that's why they're saying now that this is part of the things that causes a barrier. This is part of it. Is that you are confusing the strategy and the tactics. Strategy is more long-term than tactic. Strategy is, over this period of time, I should accomplish this goal and this vision. But tactic is telling you, now, within this period of time, I want to accomplish this. What are you going to do? What steps will you take? Where will you go to? Who will you meet? All these are things we must consider. And you see another thing why it's good to be very systematic about it, is that when you decide to be systematic, you will now start realizing that there are other things you need to consider. But ordinarily, when it's informal and it's just all in your head, you will not actually realize that there are other things you need to consider. But putting it down will make you know that this and these are things to be considered. Are we following? Yeah. Okay. Now, let's move on to the second one. Now, before we move on to the second one, what's the method of approaching this? Because for every problem, there's a solution. Now, it says, developing the strategic market plan first. This entails greater emphasis on scanning the external environment. You see that? Greater emphasis on scanning the environment. What's that telling us? That before we are making our tactics, we have scanned the external environment first. What are the factors involved? Who are the people involved in this? Because the external environment is going to greatly influence our plan. It will. It will. Okay, now let me just use the example. Look at a coach, a football coach. Doesn't it bother you? Why are they more organized than this other team? You forget that in the whole planning room, the coach is giving them plannings and strategies that they will go to the field to deploy. I've thought about this thing before, and it's very, very systematic if you think about it. It's almost like a computer operation. That's how it honestly works. But you find out that coaches, the ones who are more meticulous, the ones who can pay more attention, you find their own players doing better than those who are just scratching surface. So this is what we're talking about here. Think of yourself as a coach, and think of yourself having different people who are going to be applying every single thing you are saying. And then look at yourself as putting down every single thing that needs to be done. They're now considering the external environment. All these things are very, very key. That's what he's saying here. Emphasis on scanning the external environment. Now, he goes on to say, the early identification of forces emanating from it. All this might seem like English, but we must understand what it is trying to say. There are forces that are emanating from those external environments they are talking about. It is too key, but how well have you analyzed these factors? How well have you analyzed them? That's what he's saying. The early identification. early identification of forces emanating from it, and developing appropriate strategic responses. Appropriate strategic responses involving all levels of the management process, of management in the process. This is an approach to confusion between tactics and strategy. So whatever plan you're making now, make the strategy, fine, but ensure that there is a tactic for that strategy. And ensure also that you have made emphasis on scanning the external environment and the forces that emanate from it. All these are very, very key. There are a lot of companies that before they execute any operation, they make sure there's a strategy and a tactic. This is very, very important. Now, moving forward, let's move on to the next one. Now, okay.
Is it the factors that react against your plans or what?
The forces now are the people. People are also a part of those forces. They are the major part of the force we're talking about here. The people. But if you still want to extend it, the forces are also the environment. The environment also influences it. It's still part of it. It could possibly be negative. But you're the one who has to now consider how each of the forces affect it. So that's just it. So, okay, yes, that's actually good to ask that question, because we might be thinking these forces are maybe something. You want to understand? Of course, if it's demonic too, of course. No, but just to be clear.
When you say part of forces affecting it,
yes,
spiritually
is involved. Very true. Very true. Very true.
You have to digest.
Of course. The force is also spiritual. Yes. The context, yes. Yes. Exactly.
The main ingredient
Yes.
are the people.
Yes, people, exactly.
Forces might lose against you.
It's true. No, I get what you're saying.
You have to make your students understand it very well.
Of course, sir. Very true.
So your student can fail the exam.
It's true.
So if you are already at that high point, allow the other people to get
Of course, it's true.
This
kind of teaching,
Yes.
this idea of spiritual attachment. To analyze your opponents, what you are doing. When you want to put your spiritualism, when you leave, add that one to there.
That one is personal. That one is personal.
No,
For the
yeah.
sake of the teaching.
Yes.
Forces, external forces.
Yes.
They are
Yes.
not that obvious. And everybody knows that there might be spiritual forces. Because for the people that we are seeing.
Yes. Thank you very much for the. All right. So now, moving on. Now, the second one says lack of in-depth analysis. Many of us are guilty of this. We have said this several times that when we deploy a particular plan, we need to go back and evaluate. But you should know that without that evaluation, you will not do the analysis. That's just one thing you must know. But it's during the evaluation that you do the in-depth analysis. Most people do not do it. So lack of in-depth analysis is one of the barriers to successful marketing strategies. Now it says, the most common complaint of ineffective marketing planning concerns lack of adequate information for the purpose of analysis. Lack of adequate information. Don't forget, previously we have said now that scanning the external environment is what will present you the information you need for this analysis before putting out a plan that you really, really want to do. But all those things are still all part of the development of the marketing strategies. It's all part of it. Now, the method of approaching this particular barrier is to acquire more precise information. Acquire more precise information for the purpose of in-depth analysis. Now, the following parameters should be considered. First of all, the environment. Secondly, the market. Thirdly, competitors. And lastly, internal strengths and weaknesses. Because most times you might do your analysis, but you might not know the factors to consider. That's just the truth. But with this now, you know the factors to consider. Because we all should go out now after this teaching to actually form a very concise plan. A concise plan that we can try out and come back to evaluate. But all these are factors that we must actually consider. Is very, very key before we can do in-depth analysis. Now, let me say this before we continue, that in life, right, there's no one template to approach anything. There are diverse several templates. But most times you need to understand the templates that you are making use of. So if you are making use of this template that we're talking about here, you need to understand it. You need to understand that you as a person will need to be responsible enough, and you need to have the willpower to exercise every single thing that we're talking about here. There's no one template. I'm mentioning that there's no one template because something else can inspire us. A different information can inspire us to add something else what we are saying here. But all this is just creating a guideline for us. So these now are the factors to consider when doing in-depth analysis. Now, let's move on. Are we all following? Let me just find out. All right, thank you very much. Now, the next one says, ignoring what competitors are doing. Ignoring what competitors are doing. As a matter of fact, this is something that everyone should look out for. Normally, as people, we're meant to engage in healthy competition, not unhealthy competition. And part of what healthy competition entails is you being able to learn from your competitors. That's part of healthy competition. And not seeing it that because you're competing with them, you cannot learn from them. You can learn from them and still move hand in hand. And what does he say here? He said, no matter how successful your company is, you must keep track of your competitors. Competitor research does not mean you have to constantly monitor the campaigns of other companies so that you will have something to replicate. Now, he says, while you can use their best practices as a guide on what to do, it should not be your only focus. It shouldn't be your only focus. So you see that we can use their best practices. Best practices. Look at your competitors. What are they doing? What steps are they taking? You can use that to add to your own strategy. What are they doing? So all of this will help us stay creative. All of this will help us stay innovative on coming up with different styles on what we are doing. Now, what's the approach towards this? The method of this approach is simple. What does it say? It says, you can use their campaigns to know what keywords work in reaching your market and which channels generate leads. Now, it says, at the same time, you should also figure out what tactics they are not using. See that? Figure out what tactics they are not using. In doing so, you will have the opportunity to find gaps in their marketing strategies that you can use to differentiate your brand. So you see that? So as much as we want to focus on their best practices, we can also know that we can look at what they are not doing and then implement it. It's as simple as that. Now, I remember I have used this example before, but I would like to use it again. The iPhone right now and the 4 camera at the back. And that thing is, I like to use that example because it just happened so dramatically. How iPhone dropped theirs with 4 cameras. The next thing, other Android phones started using it. What does that mean? That is iPhone's own best practice. And other companies saw that we can adapt this to boost our own competitive advantage. And that is why they now are now using it. And they are seeing how the sales are coming in. But if you look at it, those Android phones will look at what Apple is not doing, and then they'll go and add it to their own products to make it better. So you see that all these are instances that we can learn from. We can learn from it. Because as much as we know that we are out there pushing our brand and pushing our businesses, we need to know some intricate details, and this is part of it. This is part of it. Now, let's look at the next one. Now, this one says confusion between process and outputs. Most times we are so carried away with the output that we forget that the process is also as intricate. The process is also very, very, very important. So now, this is a point where we are so confused on what the process should be because we have to focus on the output. Now, what does it say? It says, confusion between the management process itself, the output of the process, and the marketing plan is common. This is a very, very common confusion. In most cases, plans are too bulky to be of any practical use. And I'm sure we have experienced that before. The plans are too bulky to be of any practical use. But when you see that the plans are really, really bulky and you see that there are too many plans out there, look at your objectives. Look at your objectives and how urgent they are and which one you want to accomplish before you can really know the process to build up to the output. Because most times the plans can be so much, you don't know how to just bring everything together and make the output. But by the time you as a person can prioritize objectives and bring everything together one after the other, make it systematic, you have a page where you put all these things down. I've said this thing before. You have a page, put all these things down, make it systematic and not just informal, not just in your head. And let me also say this, most times I feel people are ashamed of anybody seeing their plans and maybe it looks shabby. Don't care about that. We shouldn't care, don't even worry about that at all. Put down every idea that comes in. As a person, I have a book. I have 3 different books for 3 different ideas. I have one for business, I have one for personal, and I have one for ideas generally. I have no shame in putting anything down there because it's my personal workbook. I have no shame. No matter what the idea is, no matter what the step is, no matter how it sounds to anybody, even if it sounds somehow to you, put it down. It can come in handy. It can come in handy. So all these are things now that will help us to know how the process should look like so that the output can be what we desire. Now, what's the method of this approach? What's the method of approaching this? It says, make effective use of the SWOT analysis. Make effective use of it. Make effective use of it. And now it says, to do that, your analysis should be focused on each specific segment of crucial importance. Be focused on each specific segment of crucial. Now, if you look at the SWOT analysis, if you look at all this. Now, what is the specific segment that is of crucial importance? Is it the opportunities? Is it your strengths? Focus on which one. And then be very honest with yourself. That's another thing I'll say. Be very honest. What is your strength? What is your weakness? Don't be ashamed to put it down and tell yourself the truth. Tell yourself the truth. Now, the second one says, let it be a summary emanating from the market research. I thought about this thing yesterday while I was preparing this presentation, and I found out that you as a person can decide to even go out and then tell people about the product. But this time, what you want to hear from them is, what do you think about this? Not really about the closing. What do you think about this? What do you think will benefit you about this particular property? By the time you can ask 5 people, 6 people, I am sure you'll be able to come up with the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of both the product and even yourself. Fact finder, yes. So that's it. When you can do this, just go and ask people, what do you think about this product? What do you think about how do you think to benefit you? By the time you hear what the person will say, ask 5 more people, and you can tell that there will be similarities between what they will say and there will be differences. Note it down. That will help you know the strengths of your product as well as yourself and the weaknesses. Making effective use of the SWOT analysis. Now, the third one says, let it be brief, interesting, and concise. Don't forget, it's your workbook. It's your workbook. You can decide to abbreviate, but let it be brief, concise, and interesting. It is your own workbook. It's your personal stuff. It's your personal stuff. So that's the third one. The fourth one is list key external opportunities and threats only. Create a part for that. Listing only opportunities and threats. After meeting 5 people to ask them what they think about your product, believe me, you will find out the threats. You find out the threats to that particular product. You find it out after asking 5 people about it. So, but ensure you list it down. Listing it down is what is very, very important. List key external opportunities and threats only. Then last one says, focus on key factors only. Focus on key factors only. So all of this now, by the time we've done all this, we will know now that the process now can be better explained to us as business people. Because most times it can be confusing. You don't know how the process should look like. You don't know what it should look like. But by the time you can use your SWOT analysis effectively, you will know what the process should look like. But remember, the sum must emanate from marketing research. We have talked about this in one of our classes before, marketing research. Let it emanate from that. That's why I had to use the example of meeting people and asking them what they think about the product and find out what each of them says. Very, very key. Now, moving on. Please note that as a real estate consultant, when doing your SWOT analysis, do it in favor of both you as a brand and the company that you represent. Because we now as people, we have the result of our own SWOT analysis as a company. But you as a person too, you have your strengths, you have your weaknesses, and you have the opportunities as a person and the threats. You as a person. Because you are, as a person, you are a brand, you are a company. Apart from even C-plotters that you are representing, you are a brand, you are a company. And SWOT analysis can also relate to you as a person. So this now is just a very short side note for us. Now, lack of knowledge and skills. Lack of knowledge and skills. This is another very, very key thing. Very, 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 very key. Lack of knowledge and skills. This has hindered so many people. I remember one time Mr. Jackson said that the level of competence we like to get to is where he's relating with a real estate agent. And then when certain topics come about, you can easily flow. You can easily flow. Now imagine when you as a person cannot easily flow. And then the person you are talking to is capable enough to introduce you to a business. But the person sees that, this person, you're not really up to par. That is a barrier. Already. Lack of knowledge and skills. So as a business person, be well versed in the industry which you serve. Be well versed in it. Understand all the intricate details. Who are the people that are involved? What are the key trends that are happening right now? Be well versed. Now it says here, it must be a matter of great disappointment to academics that many of the components of a typical marketing syllabus are rarely used by practicing marketers. Majority learn by trial and error, and most times the errors are really costly ones. See that? Let's not wait for costly error first before we know that we need to acquire knowledge and skills. Very, very key. Now, what's the method of approaching this? Ensure to keep yourself abreast of information regarding your industry. You can do this by engaging the many channels by which this information are disseminated. For example, seminars, newsletters, videos. These newsletters is too key, it's too important. It's too important. Keep yourself abreast of the information regarding your industry. So that when you are discussing with another real estate consultant who's also as into the business as you are, you can easily flow. Now it says it is also to know how to get this information as well as how to utilize them. That's also key. That as much as you are gathering information, know how to utilize them. Know how to utilize the information. All these are really, really key. Really, really, really key. Now, this also is very, very important. Lack of a systematic approach to market planning. We have already been stating about this already, even before we got here. But this is one of the barriers, actually. This is one of the barriers. So if as a salesperson, as a businessman, your approach towards market planning is not systematic enough, please, let it be systematic. Not just informal anymore. Not just a matter of saying it to yourself or saying it to somebody. Let it be a matter of putting it down somewhere. That is what creates a systematic approach. And I can promise you, by the time you grow as a business person and you look back to your workbook where you make all the plans and strategies, you smile. You smile like, wow, okay, so this is when I was putting out this plan, and look at the results. Wow, what a time. Good old days. All of that is necessary. Let us be systematic with our planning. Now, what does it say? It says, while we can admit that the marketing planning and execution process can involve some unforeseen activities. We can admit that. Can involve some unforeseen activities. It is, however, important to have a concise, systematic procedure that can serve as a guide for every step. This is too key because most times in our plan, there can be some unforeseen activities. But the truth of the matter is, by the time you have a systematic procedure that will serve as a guide, you will not be confused. You won't be confused. Now, what's the method of approaching this? Simple. It is essential to have a set of written procedures and a well-argued common format for market planning. Well argued. I just like that part because most times we can create a plan and then we can meet somebody else and drop that plan to the person. And I'm telling you, by the time you tell that person that plan, you will see some other ideas coming out that you did not think about. That's why they have to say a well-argued common format. Because sometimes a procedure, a particular tactic can be on your mind. And you decide to tell somebody. Just tell the person and hear what the person thinks about this tactic. You see ideas coming out. Ideas, things that you did not consider before. You see them coming out. Now, it says now that the purpose of such a system are to ensure all key issues are systematically considered. Sometimes it's not all issues we can consider, it's not all of them. But this now, systematic planning is what will help us to consider every single key issue. Now, the second one says to pull together the essential elements of the strategic planning. To pull together the essential elements of the strategic planning in a consistent manner. Put together the essential elements. Put together the essential elements. What are the things you need to consider? Who needs to be spoken to? Where can I get to first? Who is this person I can liaise with now that will bring about productive business endeavor? All these are very, very key things. Systematic planning, systematic approach to our marketing planning is very, very key. Now says also to help corporate you manage and compare diverse businesses and to understand the overall condition of prospects for the organization. Let me look at this again. To help corporate you manage and compare diverse businesses. It's true. Yes. Compare diverse businesses. Also, that's what a systematic approach also help you do. To compare diverse businesses as well. Yes. And to understand the overall condition of prospects for the organization. We, as a company, we have prospects for our organization. Other companies too, they have prospects for their own organization. And check it out. You can see that there will be a difference. But without systematic approach, you will not know how to compare the prospects for each organization. You don't know how to compare it. What kind of prospects do we need as a company? We have land in Asaba. What kind of prospects do we need? What kind of prospects do we need? And how can you compare the diverse businesses that also have estates in the East? All these are very, very key things. Systematic approach to our market planning. Now, moving on. This is now one very key one I was talking about before. Failure to prioritize objectives. You know, we have already said it before that most times your plan can be so bulky, you don't know where to start from. Look at your objectives. Which ones do you need to accomplish? After filling out your strategy and you need your tactics, what are the objectives that each tactic is meant to accomplish that will lead you closer to the strategy? All these are also very, very key. Now it says, even when organizations are successful in producing well-reasoned marketing plans, it is not uncommon to find each marketing plan as many as 50 objectives and as many more strategies. See that? This is because of the hierarchy effect of a principal marketing objective leading to a number of sub-objectives. You see that? That is, you can have a lot, your plan can involve a lot of objectives, a lot of sub-objectives. But how can you bring them together? How can you know which one to execute first? Now it says, the result is that marketers can and do get overwhelmed by these objectives, which in turn results in the creeping, not implementation of marketing plan. It can be that bulky that because you don't know where to start from, you don't now implement any of the strategies. But when you can prioritize your objectives, that is for this tactic I have, this objective, this is what it is meant to accomplish. Every single objectives. We will know how to implement better. All these are very, 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 very key. Prioritize our objectives. Let's know which one is urgent, which one is really urgent, which one can get me closer to the strategy that I'm working towards. It's very, very key. Now let's look at the method of approaching this. It's simple. Ensure that all objectives are prioritized according to their impact on your organization. So you see that for every tactic that is being executed, it has an impact on your organization. For every tactic, for every objective, it has an impact on your organization. So ensure that all objectives are prioritized according to their impact on your organization. Like I said, you are a company on your own. You are an organization on your own. Now, also, that resources are allocated according to the nature of each objective. Too important. So we see this. What we're putting together here now is all the barriers, the confusions, the lack of this, the lack of that, things we do not consider. Some of these things we might know them in our heart, but we do not really know how to approach them. So all these things would help us at least to bring a better approach to all these barriers. Now, what's the conclusion in all of this? With all being said and done, with stating all the barriers, everything being said, what's the conclusion? A great company knows the importance of storing their brand in the minds of the market that they serve. See that? A great company knows how important it is to store their brand in the minds of the market that they serve. Instead of a compelling tagline, it is more important to ensure customer satisfaction. Yes, we know this. To do this, you will need to have successful marketing processes. However, effective marketing strategies can be hard to achieve. That is why many marketers make mistakes. Knowing the common barriers that marketers go through can help you prepare strategies that will work in your company's favor. Now, all these are common barriers. Now, I would like to implore us all, if you can do your research, you will find all these things that we're saying now on the net. You find them. I can assure you that. Yes, exactly. You find it. So, with all being said, I hope I've been able to convince you all that certain barriers have approaches that we all can inculcate in our businesses. It all depends on our responsibility and our willpower. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much. Yes. Yes. All right, thank you for listening. Any questions?
For me, I discovered that this your lecture is more of administrative than ordinary
Okay.
Organize your staff and make it more functional.
Yes.
Just like the way you use a team.
Yes.
Because we marketers, what we always clamor for is to meet somebody, give him flyers,
Yes.
tell him about the product
Mm.
and the advantages and rest of it.
Yes.
So let's as a company more on what you have just presented.
Okay.
Well,
Yes. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. But let me just add something to what you said. Is that I said something before that you're a company as a person, and all these things is applicable to even you as a person, not just an organization that is set up and established. You as a person can also apply all these things being said. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Yes. 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 Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Okay, sir.
Sometimes, no matter how brilliant you are, plan may be,
Yes.
in terms of tactics, in terms of the strategy, you can be influenced to either succeed or fail as a result of unforeseen environmental forces.
Yes.
Now, why I'm saying this is because while you have powers over making a plan and then structuring it in terms of the tactics and then the strategy you want to use,
Yes.
there are other forces that may crop in
Yes.
and affect the success or the failure of that plan.
Yes.
Just as we have seen
Yes.
For instance, I meet a young man, and I have worked on that young man, and he has made up his mind to want to go and then inspect the land.
Mm.
Now, on going there, probably I have myself not been able to get to the land.
Yes.
Because the company for which I'm working has not provided that atmosphere for me to sit down.
Okay.
Now, on getting there, he meets with a different environment.
Okay.
From what I have, prepared his mind for.
Yes.
So if you are not careful, he might not buy.
Yes,
no
true.
matter how you have prepared his mind.
It's true.
I think this lecture is talking about that.
Yes.
So strategically, even with the marketers, we must work in conjunction with the company.
Yes.
To make that some of these things succeed.
Yes. Very true. That's true.
That is the way it is.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir. But if you remember something that was said in one of the slides, it was your response. Your response to every single of these unforeseen activities. Most times, your response that determines what comes next. So, but when you as a person are prepared enough, you have the necessary skills and the competence, you would give the right response. But most times, it can just happen that it is not, the deal is not meant to be closed. But the truth is, you as a person can be responsible enough to respond accurately to whatever unforeseen activity may want to come in between you and the deal. So that's just, it's just the response. It's just the response as a person. Just the response.
And to add to that, in some instance, you can, even before you go to that particular person to approach the person, you will now be able to tell yourself, if I should, you understand, say this, and what will this person,
What this person say? Yes.
what will be his
His response, yes.
And when this person responds this way, what will I
What
give
will I-
again?
Yes.
You understand?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Objections.
That's what I said. In spite of that high grammar,
Yes.
that we have seen here,
Yes.
it's just a question of, as an individual, and I am doing this job, what is my own strategy towards the success of what I am doing?
Yes.
That's what it is.
True. Yes, sir.
And another thing again is, if luck is on your side,
Mm.
like when you say lack of knowledge and skills,
Yes.
I know of one Yoruba man like that before, from a sister company like that, not mentioned name. So he doesn't even know how to communicate in English.
Okay.
But his making says more than somebody who is blowing grammar. over and
Okay.
over. He has scars just from making says, not that he knows how to do the communication of it.
Okay.
Most of these things just factor, environmental factor.
Mm.
You that think that you know everything.
I'd like to say something, sir. I'd like to say something. According to the SWOT analysis, that particular person is making use of his strength to build his own competitive advantage. That's just what it is. That's just what it is. That's just it. That's just it.
So whatever you are speaking grammar, what plans are you making with their grammar?
Exactly.
And you can say it in any language, whether it's English.
Exactly.
But
Yes.
when you just limit it to only maybe English language,
No. It depends on what you're selling. Will you say you want to go and speak Yoruba to somebody from his Igbo? No, you will not now.
and to my greatest surprise, people that even buy from him are not Yorubas.
Okay.
How would we be able to communicate with them and convince them
Okay.
to come and buy?
Exactly. That's just it. It's called their strength. And your own strength.
What you need to do is go close to that person. Know exactly
Yes.
what he's doing, just like what he said.
That's it.
Discover your own strength.
Exactly.
Where your strength lies,
Yes.
follow it.
Exactly. Where your strength lies.
Maybe your actions.
Yes.
So let me add one thing to it.
Okay.
My brother, if you learn, if you have knowledge of what you have, it's why.
Yes.
Then if you are able, what that guy has done is this, but you won't know. There are people who want property. There are those who need property. And most of the times, you go to those who want property.
No
The
need.
man is meeting those who need property.
Yes.
So might see, we go for marketing, there are three people. You look at them, my student says, give one flyers. I'll give a flyer to this man. These other three people are complaining. I said, please, you can look, take a look at the one that put that person. And the two of them can see it. But inside me, I know that maybe this man that we need this problem. So there's a difference. All of us want property.
Yes.
But unless the Spirit directs you to those who are in need,
Yes.
you see things begin to work.
Yes.
Yeah. You see things. So the guy has not done the same thing. You may think he has done anything, no. Yeah. He has studied. Someone who was giving testimony, I think last month, he went to this Aboju market. Where they are doing a time. Dying the woman there. She was seriously discussing with a Yoruba lady over a property in a bank. Another woman saying the same over her guy. Said, sister, please, do you have asama? So yes, I have been asama. She was using her language, Yoruba. The woman, the girl just brought the flyer that has asama, not simpler, and gave to the lady. The following day, the woman went asama. Went to that side, she paid for 2 plus. The girl said she went to her church and was, because it was just like a drama.
Wow.
That woman has been in need.
Yes.
What it was waiting for.
Yes. 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 Yes.
So
Yes,
it
true.
created itself. So most of the times, if I go for marketing, I begin to ask God, direct me to those who are in need. And if you check what we are doing, some of us, consumer, have offended so many people. I went to the last week. Instead of marketing, the 3 places I went to, I just finished with them and I left. It was solving other problems pertaining to land. You see that so many have gone to their townsmen, maybe knowingly or knowingly, I don't know, to market properties. After 2 or 3 months, and most of these 3 guys are made differently. They didn't go to site. They won't see the company again. They won't see they were calling some of the marketers. Sonny, since I've got I said it cut off in the line. The companies are no longer in existence.
Wow.
So when we even come with our flyers and you are happy, you know what you are marketing. One person will just bring your spirit down and the one of those. So these are the kind of things you encounter in the market.
True.
You'll be able to try and see. I know that little helping hand I did will attract something, but not now. Yeah, sure. I told them, bring your receipt, let me see, bring your receipt. We were there. No one, this one, this company, you have a similar name, but I've never met this company. They were just watching what I was doing, trying to see how we can solve a problem I did not create. So we have so many problems out there. So don't be scared. Just begin to pray to God that I should leave those people and do it.
Yes. 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 Thank you very much, sir. That was much needed.
Mr.
That's much needed.
That he is talking basically on, especially this last segment, on pain points.
Yeah, pinpoint. Yes, now pinpoint. Yes. How is it addressing someone else's pain point?
Pain points.
It's true.
Now, it is good that you handle those pain points. Somehow, some way, it will reward you.
Yes. 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 All right. I really appreciate everyone for coming once again. Yes.
This point, then in case of this point, then if that person complain, maybe I show you the company. Okay, what is your take there? Are you going to, help me facilitate? No, I was, to get the right information about the company. Yes, I've even done it for more than 1 month. There is too much confusion. I've done it. If you don't do it, it even will help you. They are not seeing you as anything. They don't say, this person. bring a
They
large
say
number.
they are
You
the
will make
same.
it. I made what I was marketing look real. When you said brick wall,
Yeah,
brick stone,
brick wall.
the first thing I said is they can never cheat you, is a lie. And the man said, I said yes now. I said, do you know the company? I said they have the biggest estate in Lagos. They don't know. I said, please, I said, can I wait? I said yes. I said, let the boy come and look for the fire. You know, Amen Estate. Those who market Amen Estate, the company, the principal company is Brickstone. This thing is still the same Brickstone, but this one is Brickstone Ventures.
Okay.
So when I called Bestman, you all know Bestman, he comes here. I said, Bestman, please, Brickstone, did they do what? They shouted. You know, it was in the speaker. Say it's not possible. I told the man, bring that. I will tell you the body. I saw Brickstone Ventures. So it's a laugh.
Ventures.
Wow.
This one is Ventures. This company took the name of the other one
Wow.
well to do this.
Wow.
And your brother is not sincere. It's a very simple song. It is possible you are doing business, one problem or the other will come. He will come to you and explain. But this one is not picking call. The call is the next moment they left the phone. When they called back, it was the wife who picked the call. You see the problem? Beginning that you know something is happening. So when I tried 4 numbers, and they have about more than 7 branches, none worked.
Wow.
And I so I picked their name, their head office address along this first track. When I went there, this is the place I passed all the time. The company is not there. So from the onset, what it means is that they are fraudsters. So they are prepared. They make the business look real, but it is not real. So that's the danger.
Wow.
They still have staff.
Now,
Call them staff.
so
Wow.
you should be careful, but in your attempt trying to help now, the man is seeing, to answer the question, he's seeing that true. The people are saying this man is very different.
Yes.
For him to even
Listen to you.
live his own way
Dress
and be interested in this.
Something.
When I say the man is, that was that's my situation. He has sold to over 20 people. Imagine the kind of commission he has made. So when he will go to, he won't be going to Christmas now. How will he be doing? This was a politician will know what they do. But that's too much. So you will go, you will see this your brother, a bat, when I should come over. This one, the man doesn't care. So he's part of the scam.
Sometimes we are just agreed.
Yes. So that is the situation. I have to tell you that.
Because that company will present
the thing is,
itself to
that
be
is-
real, and with your sincere mind, you will be marketing.
Yes.
At the end, they had another thing in mind.
It's
Because
true.
there was something that we did almost 5 or 7 years ago. Somebody called me about the money. Well, I have forgotten about that company. Even me, I was not paid. But those people that they have collected their money, they could not locate their office. Everything they have promised, none of them you will see around.
Oh.
So when such a thing now happen, they will be looking at you as if you are a liar. Whereas you are not. Because as simple as it is now, it's what you now present to us that we are selling.
Yes.
God forbid bad thing at the end, if something should happen, then they will come back to us because they know us, they don't know you. You know, so it's at times it's not the fault of marketers.
So you see,
It's
that
true.
is
It's
why,
a company.
see where our fault, sorry.
No problem,
See
sir.
where our fault comes from. Market the product you know. I deal with Silver Park.
Yes,
He has over 12 sites. So I'll carry it up now. Like his property name, I come from Phillips. I don't market his property name. But he has a good site. I market Silver. In Lagos, I market only 3 offices. So, and I have gone there. This went to Obuak about 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Obuak is a town before Port Harcourt. Desert. I went to market a place you buy property for 700,000, 400, 300. But I went to market a property they sell for 15 million a plot. Is it possible? No. But I went to do that. And before you know it, I got bankers who are ready to pay if you are ready. I got this one oil company in Port Harcourt. But before I did that, those people that were, because I have people I was marketing, I have the level of people I wanted to key into it. None of them listen to me. You know why? The former governor of Abia State, with the banks, connect with the banks and scan them. They were paying 400,000 for a plot. The government to give you receipts. None of them saw one plot of land. So when I came to Port Harcourt with my team, I mentioned Obuak. It's not Obuak goes all those kind of, I say it's not that Obuak. This one that is an individual development. It doesn't concern government. When we saturated the areas we want to have flyers and talks, was amazing. You know, we got freight forwarders from Abia State that they wanted to come to this side of Abia and be going to Port Harcourt. After doing seminar for them, I gave them information there. I said, what day has 3,000 plots in Obuak in Sea of Coke. And I was calling them, how do I know? I said, because I'm working with those who matter in government. Say what Ojo Okaro did to you people. As long as you have your receipt, at the end you collect land. That Obuak, what the governments are doing there in Obuak, any government that comes, he will collect maybe 1,000 plus, give himself Sea of Coke. I'll be waiting for the day the place will kick off. It was this information I was giving to them that they began to listen to me. And they now saw there was a different thing in us. On this process, where I was ready to begin, maybe to begin, I had problem with the man I was marketing this product. What is the problem? I said, okay, I only need 4 plus for 10 million. Let us start building something. You will see what will happen. That's the way. Sir, as I was there, when you decide, I had 8 people from Lagos. I told them my condition, what they see, and I did. Anything I managed, provided it for us. Left side. It was later, because the man saw the intensiveness of our advert. He thought if I leave, we'll be able to sell. So once I left, I came to Lagos. 3 months. And once I came to Lagos, so my family said I should go to the office and give myself, but I don't give reports. You have your land account and own team. You can be selling from your office. When I went to there, he said he's terminating my appointment. Give me next week, I'll send all your things back to you, which I need. Before they talk, they don't employ, secretary. 5 beautiful women. They tell them to pursue. 1 month they close up the place. He thought he would be able to. What? They come and say, where is that man? Where are those people when they didn't stay there? So it's like that in this property business. There are so many people, government, even in Lagos, most of the people they cost here is you get a land, it is the same government that will be on that policy and skyline. You may think